And I'm Guy. And this is your home for everything Alberta independence. Let's get into it, Nat.
Exactly. First of all, thank you so much for joining us today. Please don't forget to subscribe. Again, it really does help us out.
Yeah.
That's why we continuously say it. And to like the stream. We always also forget to say that. But we also try to read most, if not all, of your comments live. We do give priorities to super chats. Those also really help us out. And also we have memberships. Thank you so much to all our members.
Well, and I will say, I fixed the little light bulbs behind us. I was like,
They were too bright.
They were bright. And I noticed them when we did our clips and threw them out as edited videos. I was watching it back and I was like, how do I fix that? I had these little dimmers and I put each one on a dimmer. Now they're not bright enough, but I guess too dim is better than too bright.
Well, hopefully we won't see them sparking or something weird, which is what I'm actually afraid of.
Well, it is thundering outside, so
Yes.
we sometimes do have electrical issues here, as you know if you're a regular viewer of Nat the Guy, but we will do our best to come back on if the power goes out.
Yes, frequently the power goes out. Usually we try to fix it. Summerfeed says, hi everyone. Hello. Thank you for being here. 300 mile per hour martyr says, nice flag, Guy.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it took a while to get that because we already fled Canada, voted for our own independence, and moved to Mexico. We had a hell of a time getting Alberta flags down here. I ended up ordering two because the first one didn't come, but we got them now, and independence is well on its way.
Now more than ever, I would say, especially with what's going on. Mike Freedom Honey, hello, Mike.
Oh,
Thank you for being here. It says smash that like button. Yes, we always forget to say it, and continue saying smash it. So thank you so much. It really does help us out.
Absolutely.
And as you were mentioning, we do have clips now going out from the live. So if you just want to watch a segment or you want to watch it later, you can also now do that.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. I really appreciate everybody that's lent support, put comments on the little clips, hit the like button, stuff like that. We've always just kind of been a live show for a long time. So it's a big kind of transition, but hopefully it drives more people to the lives for Alberta independence so we can get over the line and send a message to Ottawa on October 19th.
Oh, we do have an opinion though. Rob Schlaw, I guess, says Alberta doesn't have the votes for independence. The cities will vote to remain in Canada.
I think he says that every episode. And
it's a new
he's
guy.
going to find out on October 19th how much support Alberta independence actually has. It has so much support. I believe Mark Carney isn't going to let this thing go through to a binding referendum. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But there's other plans we have if Mark Carney tries to block the binding referendum after this. And one of those things is a unilateral declaration of independence. It's a last resort. We don't want to have to use it, but if the federal government wants to play games, we're ready to play games.
And I think the U.S. would be quite on board with that as well, with helping. But Anya Zinski, thank you so much for the $2 super chat saying love your clips. Thank you.
Thank you.
As you can tell. And it also says watching from Edmonton. Thank you so much.
Well, and we reformatted the show a little bit. So if you've been watching the lives the last few days, you've seen some hiccups, but it works better for our clips overall.
Yeah. And Rob Shaw says, you don't have the votes. Half of the CPC and UCP voters even want to remain.
Well, we own the UCP, so I think we might just have a leadership review for Danielle Smith. We're going to get into some of her statements that I didn't appreciate. She's been making a few good statements lately, but there's one that's extremely concerning. It seems like she's talking out both sides of her mouth. She has one statement for people supporting independence and another for the Federalists and the federal government.
And also, have you sat down to consider, especially now that you're seeing, number one, how Alberta is being treated, but how it has been treated historically, and if it has or hasn't benefited, for example, you in particular, if you live in Alberta, if remaining is actually the best option, aside from the whole rose-colored glasses of, we would need to stay in Canada because that's who we are.
Well, this conversation of Alberta independence is far bigger than just Alberta now. What we're seeing on a national level since Mark Carney started playing games with the U.S. government, our biggest trading partner, and tippy-toeing closer to the EU and to China and a Chinese communist model, is a lot of conservatives nationwide are already fleeing the country. Liberals are talking about it online. I watch a lot of liberal shows, so I know what the opposition is saying.
Exactly. And even those most staunchly against Alberta independence, for example, like Jen Gerson, have said that they would be willing to move to the U.S. because how bad things are in Canada and how she feels they are also in Alberta.
Well, not how bad they are in Canada, how bad she believes they're going to get.
Yeah.
And that's coming from a liberal with her elbows up that hates the orange man. So that's a little bit shocking.
Holden says, I was almost on time today. Let's go. Thank you for being here. And 300 mile per hour martyr says, Rob's law is right. We don't have the votes. Nothing to see here. Pay no mind. Yeah, go away. Go vote against it
Yeah,
if you want.
nationalists, just stay home on October 19th. No problem.
Yeah. But Rob Law says the CPC, or the Conservative Party of Canada, wants Alberta to remain. If Alberta separates, the CPC has no political power in Canada. But we all know Alberta will vote to remain. Well, that's why they're so scared. And that's why people like Pierre Poilievre are speaking against independence, even though it's supposed to line up with all the things that he always espouses and everything he says he values and he wants to maintain within Canada. That's what Alberta's independence would actually mean, being able to maintain that.
Well,
but because all the votes are there, they're scared.
Let me correct you. Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith are not stumping on the ground like they said they were going to do against Alberta independence, because when they first initially said that and then they tried their little stump speeches, their polling numbers went down. Now, once in a while, you see a clip where they speak up out against it, but for the most part, they don't have a boots on the ground approach. It's Jason Kenney and his failed flunkies. We're going to get into that later too.
Yeah, and Silverfeet asks, who is we? Exactly, Rob's law, who is we? And Walking Campbell's
Him and Mark Carney.
And Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith, apparently. Walking Campbell's Cat says Alberta independence is the future of Alberta.
Absolutely. It's just a matter of time before the rest of Canada starts waking up. And by the time they wake up, it's going to be too late. We're going to be gone.
And it's becoming more and more clear now.
Yeah.
And every single move that has happened from last Friday to today, to this Friday, has just made it way more evident.
Alberta independence has done a fantastic job leading up to October 19th. But as good as the job they didn't do nearly as much as Mark Carney did for Alberta independence when he started playing games with the USMCA.
Exactly. And actually, on that note, Alberta continues to be come upon in Mark Carney's trade war, but the faster it becomes independent, the better.
Sweet home Alberta, where the roots run deep and the money trees grow.
And let's start with this from Rebel News saying, quote, at a news conference in Grand Prairie on August 26th, the Premier implied holding referendum in spring 2027 may not be possible due to provincial legislation. So the flip-flopping continues.
And I've been saying this from the beginning. She can't be trusted. Don't believe a word out of her mouth. She initially said 2.5 to 3 years because of the court challenges and other things. She kept repeating that until she got booed and jeered in public. And then what happened? Then she started saying, well, she realized she may have a leadership review coming up because the UCP membership is controlled by the Independence Caucus. That being said, you can take it from here.
Well, it's promises made, promises not kept. And again, I think she is running scared, and she knows that she right now has two options to continue with the Canada United and Alberta. Sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, because she's looking also towards Ottawa. At least that's how I see it.
Well, what I was going to say is we need a immediate leadership review on her after the non-binding referendum, because if we think we're going to get to a binding referendum with a leader like this that's saying that she is a federalist outright, and then it's going to be possibly not the spring, this is absolutely ridiculous. We need to guarantee ourselves a vote in the spring, especially with Mark Carney and the Federalist trying to bring federalization to Canada, and all roads of federalization lead through Alberta.
And now, since the binding referendum was essentially taken off the table by Danielle Smith, and now there's a non-binding referendum, that might also be a good way for those still on the fence to just send a message to Ottawa. Maybe, probably not, but maybe it will actually not fall on deaf ears. But Jason Levine says, quote, if Alberta votes option 1, Carney will take that as approval of him and his government. Do you like what he's doing? Do you like the non-transparency? Do you like to have no idea what your future holds? Option 2 isn't a vote to leave Canada. It's a vote to let Ottawa know we are very serious. This relationship needs to change now. Vote option 2 on October 19th.
Yeah, the options couldn't be more stark, at least on the one side. It's obvious Canada's going down the road of federalization, not just of the natural resource sector, but the private sector as well. And he's going to do that through bailouts. Provinces as well as big business are going to be coming to Mark Carney for bailouts. He's going to start giving them out on the second, third, third or maybe fourth round, he's going to say, you need to give me a percentage of your company for continued bailouts. And as far as provinces go, he's going to say federalization for bailouts. And as far as the people go, he's going to be offering a UBI, which is a universal basic income. And there's all kinds of pitfalls to that in order for them to exchange their freedoms for what? Federalization again.
Yeah, well, keep them comfortable and keep them voting Liberal and elbows up without fully noticing what's going on around them. But Rise of Alberta says, quote, if Albertans don't vote option 2 on October 19, I believe Mark Carney will put tariffs on Alberta oil exports. The threat of independence is one of the few things keeping Ottawa in check, but also why they might try to accelerate this whole thing against independence.
Well, if you vote option 2, what you're voting for is traditional Western values, faith, family, freedom, and to actually save the identity of what Alberta has built. Canada is absolutely destroying its history, destroying its identity.
But also to secure the future of future generations, but not just your children or your potential children or yourself if you're young, but that of many, many to come as well. Because if you haven't noticed, if you have these rose-colored glasses of Canada is great, it's the best country ever, it's better than the US, let me inform you, Canada has become a third world country, not just in metrics, basically, but also in living standards and conditions. And even people from the third world are going back to their houses and back to where they came from because it's getting so bad. Me included, I am originally from Mexico. But another point from Let Alberta Decide is that when Canada needs economic leverage against the United States, it turns to Alberta. The stakes for a province are becoming clearer by the day. You're being used as a pawn. Watch the latest update on Alberta's economy, and let's watch what Keith Wilson has to say.
And this is absolutely fantastic. He is releasing the white papers. We now own the debate space when it comes to facts and logic. We had the APP put out their numbers in the beginning of this independence movement. They've since put out a constitution. Now we have Keith Wilson here bringing all the big business leaders as well as some military leaders together to bring out these white papers. If we get in a debate, we have facts. What does the Federalist have? They have numbers on the back of a napkin, according to Danielle Smith. And she said, well, she's going to get around to actually doing the research. They still haven't done the research. They still haven't released anything. We're on our third round of research papers here. There is a firm future for Alberta independence, and that's laid out in these papers.
But also, for those that want Alberta to remain, the few things they have is the nostalgia for a Canada that no longer exists. A Canada that a lot of the younger people never even got to witness. They were just told about it, which is why there is more and more young people also interested in the potential of not having to continue down this perilous road.
It's been a while since I've had time to do a video, and I'm glad to do one now. Where I've been, I've not been on vacation, and I have not been at the bowling alley. I've been working on this document here. That is the Alberta Transition Plan working papers. So as many of you may know that a number of months ago, I started along with my colleague, Dennis Kelma, the Alberta Transition Council. And I've brought together, and Dennis and I have brought together several experts in various fields who have helped work on working papers dealing with the details of how, if Albertans move towards...
And pause it just for a minute. A lot of people might not be aware of who Dennis Kalma is, but there was an original set of papers that research was done on as well. He helped with those. These new white papers are much, much more in depth, and it has many more experts in the field participated in this and then kind of reviewed these papers.
Independence, and Alberta is to become independent. How does Alberta transition and maintain continuity from the period of being a province into being a country? So I'm going to talk more about the white paper and where it's at in a minute. But the major event, as we all know, is that there's a trade war going on between Canada and the United States. And what to me is quite revealing about it is, as we've been discussing Alberta independence over the last 2 years, skeptics will say, well, Alberta's not strong enough to go on its own, or Alberta doesn't have the economy to go on its own, or Alberta doesn't have access to the markets to go on its own. Well, what is the reaction, the instinctive reaction from Premier Ford in Ontario and Wab Kinew in Manitoba and other premiers, and the federal government in Ottawa, when Canada's in trouble, when Canada has a challenge with its largest market, its largest trading partner, and wants to get into a fight, it looks for its biggest, most powerful weapon. And what does it go to? It goes to the Alberta economy. It says, hey, let's use the strength of the Alberta economy, and it's unique.
And pause it just for a moment. We're going to let it play a little bit longer. It's a very long clip. I highly recommend going to follow Let Alberta Decide. It is the premier organization, and I would say Keith Wilson is the premier figure within Alberta independence. Oh, God, I'm losing my train of thought there. Oh, what I was going to say is Alberta should not be Canada's biggest weapon. Alberta should be a free and independent nation, and it should be the largest and strongest trading partner to the United States.
Because the connections are already there and the interest is already there very clearly from both sides. And the fact that, again, as Keith Wilson is saying, Alberta can be used as this pawn means it has a lot more leverage, and it's way more important and more existential for Canada than they usually want to accept.
Relationship. It's unique leveraged relationship with the United States to help us in central Canada and other parts of Canada preserve our manufacturing and other access to the United States. In other words, we should just reflect that it's an affirmation of how mature, sophisticated, and powerful the Alberta economy is, which is evidence, in addition to all the other evidence, empirical and historical and analytical.
Okay, and we can leave it there. And Alberta will be far more powerful once it's its own free and independent nation. The federal government is constantly stifling Alberta by taking remittance payments, by not allowing it to develop its natural resource industry to the extent that it wants to, by putting regulations and other things on it, as well as leveraging Alberta to bring manufacturing to the east in Ottawa and Quebec. A lot of that manufacturing would actually lie in Alberta if it wasn't for the federal government, and it will one day lie in Alberta, end-to-end manufacturing from minerals coming out of the ground into the finished product.
And the possibilities are already there. And the problem is a lot of people it's not a problem. It's understandable. People have doubts and people are always asking, well, but what's going to happen? How are we going to know what it could look like? And now with these transition papers and with the white papers that Keith Wilson and Let Alberta Decide are coming out with, it's becoming more and more clear. And now the uncertainty of it, I think, might push some people into now saying, okay, maybe now I understand what the plan is. But in another province, they're also looking at what Canada's doing and trying to play games and use provinces as pawns against their self-imposed trade war against the U.S. And Saskatchewan, interestingly, Premier Scott Moe has been saying that he doesn't want that to happen either. So,
well, I'll say I'm a big supporter of Saskatchewan independence as well. It's just not quite for far enough along. It does have quite a few hurdles. One of those big hurdles is Scott Moe. Scott Moe has a lot of similarities to Danielle Smith. He'll side only so far, and you can tell here with what he's saying, he's giving populist talking points, but he can't be trusted because he's sitting right next to Mark Carney in China, as Mark Carney says, New World Order, and his eyes go like a deer in the headlights.
Yeah.
We as a province cannot.
Oh, sorry. But Juno News says we cannot and will not support export tariffs on Canadian natural resources, saying that using potash as a weapon against the U.S., warning it could end Canadian jobs and raise the cost for farmers, etc.
We as a province cannot and will not support as any kind of export tariff on our natural resources or any of our resources that are being exported to the U.S. or through the U.S. to other areas of the world. What we have faced and what those very industries have faced over the course of the last decade or better are some very flawed policy discussions and flawed policy implementations in our nation for far too long. Let me start with the potential suggestion of an export tax on potash. Saskatchewan, in the not too distant future, will be providing half of the world's potash.
And you can pause it for a minute. And this is absolutely fantastic. This is the right position to have. But how committed is he to it? He also knows there's an independence movement in his province. And this will really push people even further to independence if he takes the other stance. But every conservative outside of Scott Moe, Danielle Smith, and Jamil Javani are taking the Canada First approach. And what does that mean? That means all roads lead to federalization, whether it's conservative, NDP, or liberal. And that's becoming very obvious at this point. And I have a sneaking suspicion that Danielle Smith is going to change her stance if the Federalists can be successful on October 19th. That's why it's so important to send a message on that date that we are not to be controlled. We will be our own free and independent nation.
A tremendous economic hit to our province and to our nation. First, Canadians would lose jobs. Second, farmers on both sides of the borders would pay more for that crucial fertilizer. Third, the United States of America most assuredly would switch to buying potash from other nations around the world, nations like Belarus, for example. We would lose a long-term customer to some degree. And indirectly, I think it's fair to say, there are much closer nations that will not deal with a country like Belarus when it comes to potash procurement. This would be a tremendously flawed policy on behalf of Canadians.
And it sounded a lot like Danielle Smith's statement. Danielle Smith's statement was even better because she was brutally honest, almost trying to convince the federal government, do not go down this road. It's not going to be good. The problem with Danielle Smith is all those pipelines run through other provinces and into the United States. So that gives the federal government a lot of control over it. And when the federal government wants to actually start federalizing, what they need to do is they need to collapse the Canadian economy in a controlled way, province by province. So they have provinces coming to the federal government begging for bailouts and the federal government exchanging that for federalization.
But also, guess what, Scotty, and guess what, Danielle Smith? Even though your words are great at this point and you're pointing out obvious problems and the dangers of using both your provinces as pawns, you don't get much say in it at the end of the day, at least right now, and which is why people want to be independent, it's become, again, I just said it, it's becoming more and more clear the implications of not being independent and the implications of having to always rely and go with whatever plan the federal government has. Again, words are great, but as Pierre Poilievre has learned, they don't get you too far. Rebel News says, quote, fact check, are two premiers who govern through massive job losses now making the business case against independence. More than 100,000 jobs were lost in Alberta during Rachel Notley's tenure as premier, while a staggering 337,000 disappeared during Jason Kenney's time in office.
And again, Pierre Poilievre, Danielle Smith aren't stumping on the ground to the extent they said they were. So it's Tweedledee and Tweedledum kind of left holding the bag against Alberta independence. They're stumping against Alberta independence while pitching federalism. Federalism is socialism and communism in the Canadian way. That's Canada adopting the Chinese model.
And using all those resources and everything that they would be able to control, not for Canadians, but for friends overseas, multiple of them, I would say, including the European Union and China. But lastly, the Globe and Mail says, quote, in opinion, hateful conspiracies have become a major U.S. export. They need to be sanctioned. What about the Canadian ones?
Well, and the reason I put this article in here, it's international media as well as independent media online is so bloody important in Canada because they have a monopoly on the mainstream media right now. VPNs help Canadians kind of get around a lot of the censorship that's going on. We're talking free speech, compelled speech, hate speech, you name it. Canada is a full-on censorship regime, and they've only just started to build these mechanisms. They are quickly moving towards the model of the EU as well as Great Britain.
And another key point in this, and something worrying too, would be that you mentioned their VPNs. VPNs are leaving Canada now because of the insane policies that they're trying to pass, and some of them that they've already passed. So that should tell you something too.
Well, I'll make one more quick statement before we end the segment here, and that is right now it's a very important time to hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, not just on our channel, but any channel that supports Alberta independence right now. Censorship is really going to be coming hard over the next couple months for Alberta independence. And if we manage to get over this first hurdle of a non-binding referendum, you better believe it's going to be a full-on censorship assault from the federal government.
As the guy just mentioned, it really does help us out when you hit that subscribe button, especially if you want first to the table, even, I would say, on some issues, news, but also opinions that are important to be able to have outside of the censorship that we usually see in Canada. Thank you. But now I want to go back to your comments because I do see that there's a lot of them, specifically from, I'm guessing, the troll, Rob Schlaw.
And we're going to leave the troll in there. It can make for some interesting comments. So,
but there's a lot, and I usually like to respond too much.
Don't read them all.
I know.
It'll be a headache.
Rob Schlaw says, you don't have the votes. If you want to be American, just move to America. Well, I don't want to be American. I'm happily Mexican and live in Mexico.
Well, America's starting to wake up to the foreign interference of Mark Carney and the Canadian government. It might come down to a situation where Canada wishes they could be the 51st state once their economy really starts to collapse. By that point, Alberta should be a strong, free, and independent nation and a strong trading partner to the U.S. We do not want to be part of the U.S., not because we don't like the U.S. As a matter of fact, we want to make them our number one trading partner. But every 4 or 8 years, you run the possibility of somebody like a Joe Biden getting in office, and we don't want to be under that type of regime.
Well, Alberta has consistently voted Conservative for the past 90-something years. So
Well, exactly.
you
And
have that consistency.
the APP recently put out their constitutional document, and it has a lot of similarities to the Americans, which is good because the American system is the gold standard. Not to say it's perfect, but it's the best that mankind has been able to make to this point.
Rob Shaw continues to say, you don't have the votes, you don't have the votes. But Walking Campbell's Cat says over 60% of UCP voters support Alberta independence. Do your research.
It might be more at this point.
Exactly.
And there's going to be
Especially now.
There's going to be another campaign to continue to buy up UCP memberships and to buy up tickets for the event, so we can vote Danielle Smith out and get somebody in there that can guarantee us a binding referendum by the spring. That somebody, I hope, is Keith Wilson. I don't know if he's willing to do it, but we need somebody that has been so committed to Alberta independence that we know we will get a binding referendum, and also somebody that does appeal to nationalist conservatives within Alberta. Keith Wilson is that person.
Walking Campbell's Cat continues, dude, go troll somebody else. You have no clue. You sheep like you to follow. Go follow somewhere else. But Darren Robinson, hello, says, hi, Nan and Guy. Kenya and Notley are traitors to Alberta. Yes, they are calling for Albertans to sacrifice their jobs, livelihood, and economy for a mess that Liberals have created. Screw Canada for suggesting it. And and especially now that we're seeing how both the Carney government, but also others are reacting to what's going on, it's more than obvious they don't actually care about you.
Every politician that runs through Alberta tries to treat Alberta like a one-night stand, and this is becoming a real problem. They always gain their power, gain their notoriety through Alberta, and then they get their eyes on Ottawa, and then they betray their fundamental populist principles that got them elected in Alberta.
Mm-hmm. Walking Campbell's Cat says 46% of Indigenous that were polled support Alberta independence. Exactly.
And it's
nobody ever mentions that.
It's the largest voter bloc that supports Alberta independence.
Satius Maximus, hello, says, great. At option 1 means you support Ottawa. Option 2 means you support Alberta. So choose wisely.
Absolutely. And again, we need to talk about ride sharing and things like that. A lot of our support are in rural areas. If some of these polling stations go down, things like that, we need to be prepared.
And now he started coming up with a troll started coming up with, oh, but what's happened to the First Nations, blah, 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 blah. And that we shouldn't be listening to them apparently either, which makes no sense. But Robinson says Alberta already voted 62% to drop the transfer payments, and that will grow, so you can go suck an egg. I like that expression. Walking Campbell's Cat says, yeah, we're almost half the country. We're almost half the country voted for that clown. Meaning
Alberta's the only
Carney.
province that doesn't take shit from its politicians. We don't like them, we get rid of them, and we'll keep getting rid of them because they all end up being federalists in the end. They try to put the skin suit on of base conservative populist, and it always comes off in the end.
because they know what's convenient for them.
Yeah.
They're career politicians. It's in the name. That's their career. That's what they have to do, and they'll do what's more convenient for them rather than
Well,
for
good
the
on
people.
Albertans for never backing down and continuously ousting these clowns. Danielle Smith is next on the chopping block here.
Unacceptable French or Derek, hello, thank you for being here. Says Alberta has all the leverage. We need to leave now. And it's becoming every single day more clear and more obvious.
Absolutely.
But people like Rob can just stay and see what happens. I mean, if you don't want Alberta to be independent, move elsewhere. There's a bunch of provinces that apparently are fine with what's happening, and tell us how it goes
Well,
in 10 years.
Canadians can see the ship is sinking. They just want to take Alberta down with it.
And apparently he continues to say we don't have the votes, but 300 mile per hour says almost all First Nations that I know want Alberta independence. Half of them have for decades now, especially because they also want independence from their own, the way their own system works as well.
There's multiple independence movements working in Alberta kind of at the same time on different levels. There's the overall arching Alberta independence of all the citizens. Then there's the First Nations, and you've seen them fight their own little independence battle as well as union members and union heads. They're going two different ways on this issue.
And Ray Davis, coming with a more measured approach, I guess, says, both your children, the ones that are fighting, I guess you and I, are doing what the liberal psyops have planned, fight to each other until ultimately it will just be China and the US fighting for scraps.
Yeah.
I mean, again, eventually I'm guessing that could probably happen.
Well, and Canada is just moving closer and closer to the EU. I believe the last segment we're going to have today is going to talk all about that in depth.
Mm-hmm. Hold on one second. And Rob continues to say we don't have those. And Ray Davis says, it's call the thumbnail. Who knows what they're talking about? But over on our UMBLE, where I think things are a little bit more calm, Portofino says the USA just made an oil deal with Venezuela. Not good for Alberta.
Yeah, and it's going to double their strategic reserves, which is absolutely fantastic for them. A lot of these things that happened a few months ago are now paying dividends just before the midterms, which is fantastic for the Trump administration. A lot of people are betting against Trump. I absolutely am not. We have a secondary show called American Greatness where we support Trump through the midterms and the 2028 election. Hopefully we get a JD Vance or a Marco Rubio in there, because if Alberta independence or this binding referendum takes longer than we think, we need to have a U.S. president in office that will recognize Alberta as a free and independent nation.
Mm-hmm. And PBE says, greetings programs, hello, and says Canadians are facing the truth. Canada isn't reliant. It's dependent on the U.S. Tough talk is empty when it's backed by lies sold to a nation. And with no army, might I add, they fully rely on the U.S. Army. Lastly, Anya Zinski says, yes, we need to leave now. I'm praying, and God knows, and know that God is on our side.
Yeah, and I think prayers can only help at this point.
But on that note, let's actually get into Alberta politics, because there will be no investments if Alberta leaves and becomes independent. Well, guess what? It seems like that is absolutely not the case, and that the only thing that is actually hurting Alberta's economy is being Canadian.
He doesn't discuss federal politics. He only concerns himself with Alberta's independence.
So on that note, let's start with this from Daniel Smith saying, quote, Alberta is on track for a 6th consecutive surplus, and the Heritage Fund is on pace to hit $35 billion in 2027. Not only did we balance the budget in 25 to 26, but we are also now on track for a $2 billion surplus in 26 to 27.
This will tell you everything you need to know. We will be the strongest, freest, and most independent nation in the world once we gain our independence. We are successful because of our people, in spite of the government. The government is constantly holding Alberta down, yet this is what we're consistently able to do in spite of the government, must I say again.
Mm-hmm. Says our economy is growing faster than forecasted and faster than most of the country, and we're attracting more and more investment. Imagine if it was its own country that could be giving these numbers out, and even higher ones, because you don't have all the restrictions and impositions from the federal government.
Well, and we need to be giving a big thank you to Donald Trump, not just in Alberta, but because of all of Canada. We have all this extra money rolling in. It's because of the Iran war, which is not being escalated. It is a minimal incursion, and now they're attacking them economically. That made oil prices go up. That put a lot of money not only in Alberta's pocket, but Canada's pocket through remittance payments, which need to stop at this point.
And yet there's still traders like Jason Kenney and Noli that continue to try to do their best to hinder and hurt Alberta. Rebel News says, quote, Jason Kenney, course, calls for nationalization of Alberta oil. We've been banging on this drum, and this has been the plan for the longest time for the federal government, but now they're making it even more clear, saying that the former premier's demand that Alberta use its oil as a negotiating tool with the United States is nearly indistinguishable from Pierre Trudeau's national energy program.
Yeah, I was the first one to bang on about federalization, and I said it every day. People called me crazy, but eventually I watch a lot of liberal media. I want to know what they're saying. They kept saying elbows up, and then when they would go in their little think tanks, they said, we need federalization. And the way we get federalization is if the economy worsens, provinces will go to the federal government for bailouts, and the federal government will offer bailouts for federalization. And now you're having Jason Kenney, which is a conservative, supposedly come out banging on about federalization as well. All roads right now are going to lead to federalization. You can see it. Conservatives, including Poilievre, are going to go down this road of federalization. So are liberals and the NDP. Cultural issues, they'll have differences on. And I agree with Poilievre on most of those cultural issues, but it's a magic trick. Look over here. Will we get complete control over you through federalization and usher in the age of socialism and the Chinese style model of communism?
Because they're now their very special trading partner as well, and that they've been highlighting that all those special relationships are so important to them. There's some people that don't have their head in the sand, however. I mean, it's not as much in the sand as literally everyone you just mentioned. Harrison Faulkner says former International Trade Minister of Canada, Stockwell Day, says it was a mistake for Canada to walk away from the negotiating table with the U.S. and apply counter tariffs.
Well, I kind of disagree here. I think the Conservatives don't have a different model of negotiation. You see this, we got to put Canada first model, rather than actually saying, no, we actually need some security and some stability in Canada. We need to cut a deal with the Americans. What they're going to talk about here is, we can't go for a worse deal than what we already have. If you stay with the deal you already have, you're on a year-to-year review. You're slowly going to hollow out your business sector because they're slowly moving to the United States because they need long-term stability. So a slightly worse trade deal actually might benefit you in the long run.
That's what.
If you could go back in time and you were back in that role as the international trade minister, I'm curious if you could articulate what the red lines for you and for Prime Minister Stephen Harper would have been in a negotiation with the United States like this. What I mean is what are the concessions that you and the government of Canada would say, absolutely not, we cannot agree to this?
Well, that's a great question. On a broad way, you have to go into those saying we can't come out worse off. That's your absolute starting point. I believe it.
And pause it. And you're going to be worse off if you don't come up with a long-term deal. Again, a lot of the investment that has come into Canada over the last year, about $100 billion, $50 billion of that was from Americans buying up Canadian companies. They're going to hollow out and move those companies to the United States. Mark Carney constantly is touting the investment. The investment is short-term investment. In the long term, you're going to see those companies make a run for the border.
Mm-hmm.
To see improvements, but if you're going to wind up in a worse position by not getting some kind of deal, that's just not wise. Just to walk away and to think that somehow by coming in with even more tariffs, punishing Canadians even more, that it's going to be better for us. It's not. I'll tell you what I'm very concerned about. September 17th, Prime Minister Carney is ready to give, has been asked to give a major speech at the EU in Europe, and he's been very open, and I'll give him points. He's very open about the fact that he would like to see Canada being part of the EU and move away from the relationship with the U.S., make it even more arm's length. He's been very clear that he would like to see Canada a lot closer aligned to China.
And absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the Conservatives really don't have another plan. Why? Because I think all parties secretly or behind the scenes want federalization. That is the big game plan. And Donald Trump having a trade tiff with him allows them to get that federalization they need by slowly and meticulously collapsing the Canadian economy so they can trade federalization for bailouts.
But also both Conservatives and Liberals, all Canadians have to understand you're not at the position, you don't have the position, and almost never really did to have the position to deal with the U.S. one for one, because you're not one for one. You've never been one for one. You've been incredibly reliant on the U.S., not just in terms of trade and being able to access one of the largest, if not the largest market in the world, but also militarily and security-wise. And you've been great partners because you're kind of like one of the chips that make up the greatness of the U.S. But they can survive without you. You can't survive without them.
Well, something I'll kind of say here, Alberta independence movement, or Alberta in general, is in a very unique place. We don't have to wait for Mark Carney to move to the EU or start a bigger fight with the United States or get some kind of pathetic trade deal. We can vote for our own independence and negotiate our own deals directly with whatever countries we want to deal with. And the United States happens to be that country we want to deal with. We have a shared values with the United States, whether that's free speech or any number of other things.
And yet the propaganda machine from the federal government, subsidized and fully paid for by the federal government, continues to try to make Alberta as insignificant as possible because they need it to be a different kind of news, as always. CBC Watcher says, quote, CBC buries good budget surplus news for Alberta under bad news for New Brunswick, saying, just quickly, Alberta's expecting a $2 billion budget surplus this year. And that was it. Bad budget news for Alberta from CBC always gets a standalone story, though.
Well, this contrast right here, what first came to my mind when I was watching this was I think they're going to try to use Alberta to bail out all of Canada at some point with even more remittance payments. Let's give them some natural resource contracts and take more remittance payments. And we know the new MOUs that Danielle Smith signed are acting retroactively on a lot of oil coming out of the ground that you used to not pay carbon tax on, but now you are. And there's not even a shovel in the ground for the new pipeline yet.
And they're already being used as a pawn in this trade war. So you know where the intentions lie as to how they want to use Alberta if it doesn't become independent.
U.S. Many Canadians' eyes are on the economy. New Brunswick and Alberta released major financial updates this week, but they have very different results. Shayna Luck has been looking at this. She joins us now from Halifax. Shayna, let's start in the Maritimes where you are. I mean, we're really talking, this is the tale of two provinces and their economic prospects.
No.
Oh, we're having a hiccup. Hopefully it's not because of the rain. We'll get it going here in just a moment, I think.
It happens
US,
quite a bit.
many Canadians.
Let me go back to where we were. And we always play our clips at 1.25 speed because...
And you can drop the quality a little bit if you want. It kind of helps out usually.
Budget deficit will be bigger than they previously thought. And the finance
it doesn't want
minister said the government is looking at all
And you can drop the quality a
possible
little bit. It
options to
sometimes
reduce
helps.
spending. The opposition
the
parties
lowest.
called the new numbers
270.
disappointing.
And meanwhile, we're looking at a completely different outlook in Alberta. What do they know about their surplus? And again, this is before any of the impacts of the new tariffs have an effect on the economies.
Okay, we're going to leave the last clip there just because it's we're having some hiccups. Hopefully it doesn't continue for the rest of the show there.
True.
But one thing I will say is Alberta is the bright spot for Canada right now. And I think all roads lead to Alberta, whether it's through federalization or whether it's through bailouts or remittance payments or anything else. Alberta is quickly becoming the cornerstone for the Federalist plans. And we need to take a sledgehammer to that and vote for independence, send a message to Ottawa on October 19th, period.
You already know how you're being used, and you already know how you will continue probably to be used. Not probably, will continue to be used by the federal government. And before we continue, please don't forget to subscribe again. It really does help us out. And like the video, that also helps us out a lot. But now I want to go back to reading all your comments because I see there's quite a few coming in. Thank you so much.
And we won't be able to read all of them today, but we'll get through quite a few before we go into the next segment.
I know. Because now, I mean, they've even continued to go past the segment where I was. Hold on. Ray Davis says, Divide and Conquer, King Chuckles, Cloud Priven Strategy, sponsored by Fox Carney, Pig Farmer Family. Yeah, convoluted, but yes. Hold on, where are we? Philip Vespa, hello, thank you for being here. Voice of Sanity says, hey, Nat and Guy, I don't think Danielle's leap to federal policies will work out the way she thinks. Nobody out east will vote for her. Jason Kenney has gone full communist at this point.
I think of a lot of her policies. She has those policies and has those stances because Alberta independence is on the horizon. If the Federalists, by some miracle, God forbid, actually win the vote on October 19th, I think she's going to completely flip and take a Canada first approach. Like every other conservative, Poilievre's going to tell her to get in line. Mm-hmm. She has these stances because she doesn't want to push more people towards independence. And she's realizing she can't really stump against Alberta independence, and neither can Poilievre because their poll numbers are dropping fast in Alberta when they do.
And Philip Vespa continues, there was a poll that came out by Abacus saying a majority of Conservative Party voters agree with Carney's approach. There you have it. What more information do you need?
I've been talking about this. Carney's approach is the conservative approach. They'll haggle out on differences, but they want dollar for dollar tariffs. Why do they have such similar approaches? Poilievre should be taking the opposite approach at this point, and he's not. No conservative is really. Why? Because they want federalization. I mean, I keep banging that drum, but that's the only reason you use this kind of strategy that will bring economic devastation to Canada.
Mm-hmm. Ray Davis says, and there's a counterpoint to what he says, but says elected officials can't condone separation. It violates the oath. It's an immediate recall. But Philip Vespa says, yes, they can. Independence is a constitutional process. Bloc MPs have no problem being sworn in.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with the leadership review with Danielle Smith. It's no guarantee we're going to be able to oust her, but we're damn sure going to try.
A2.0 says,
she could have kept her mouth shut. That was her original stance. And people in Alberta independence, including this channel, supported her at this point. If she wanted a political future in Alberta, that was the path she needed to take. At some point, Carney tapped her on the shoulder and she got eyes for Ottawa.
A2.0 says, I'm only concerned about the Conservatives. I'm with I'm Alberta. Okay, there we go. I read it wrong. There we go. Corrected himself. Says, I'm only concerned about the Conservatives on Alberta and where the loyalties lay. Oh, now I see it. Thank you so much, NCW, for the $20 super chat saying, I live in Ontario. I have family members in Alberta, and I will not allow politics to divide our family. I think Alberta is lovely. And that's
Absolutely.
a good stance to take.
And I really appreciate all the support outside of Alberta as well. We live in Mexico. We already voted for our independence. We have a lot of U.S. supporters that are supporting Alberta, but surprisingly, there's a lot of people across Canada. And I believe a lot of conservatives are looking to bail on Canada right now because they can see the writing on the wall. It's not to say every conservative is, but it is to say people are fleeing in mass right now. But once we get close to a binding referendum, a lot of conservatives from across national Canada, I think, are going to participate in a great migration to Alberta to vote for freedom because they don't want to go down with the Canadian ship at this point. Now, I don't wish any ill will on Canada. I hope they get the best. The problem is the leadership right now is taking them down a very dark path, and they're motivated to do so for a lot of reasons because they have a lot of different masters in China, in the EU, and potentially they want federalization of natural resources to bail out Europe.
Yeah, but thank you so much. And I do think that that is a pretty healthy stance to take, saying you don't want politics to divide your family. There's a lot of people within my friendship circles and even family members I don't agree with, but I don't ever let my politics or our differences politically to come between us. I've had friends that decided to do that, and now they're no longer my friends. But I think being able to talk about it and debate about it in a healthy, civilized manner is what's important, and it's what's been taken away by those that continuously hurl insults on both sides, but mostly on the forever Canadian side.
Yeah.
As we've seen. Ray Davis says all conservatives are under attack for the massive liberal and commercial machine sponsored by the Democrats and the City of London.
Absolutely. And we talk a lot about Promethean Action Group. And if you don't know what that is, go check it out. All roads lead to London. And Mark Carney is one of the puppets of London. And that's why they're trying to meddle in the midterms with Donald Trump. I don't think it's going to be successful. And I think there's going to be a huge price to pay after the midterms, potentially the counseling of the USMCA and the announcement of a binding a bilateral agreement with Mexico.
Yeah. Holden says the Uniparty is here to destroy the economy. Danny and Pierre are not here to save us. They want slave class just like Carl.
Absolutely.
Carney.
And every time this talk of Uniparty comes up, I make sure I explain it. On the small issues, they have differences of opinions. And I agree with Poilievre on most of those issues, especially the cultural issues. But when it comes to the one or two really big issues that are going to dictate the future of all Canadians and give them a dark future, it is federalization. And I believe they're in the exact same boat. That's why they keep saying, well, we have a Canada first approach, and Poilievre won't say a bad word about the trade negotiations.
Mm-hmm. And Ray Davis says, still none of them have the courage to die on the separation hill. Nope, because it's not convenient for their political careers. Quickly, let me just read a few from our UMBLE just to say hello to some people. PBE says Americans don't even think about Canada. That's true. PBE is from the U.S.
Well, they are starting to think about them, and they're getting getting the attention of the Americans, and this is a dangerous game to start playing now.
Yes. It says, oh, the hate is one-sided, and it's got to stop. I only know what's going on because I have family in Toronto. The way I see it, Alberta is going to leave, and Canada is going to collapse. I worked with good people up there in Canada. Shame.
Well, you don't have hate in Toronto and Saskatchewan. Again, typically, as a general whole, both Alberta and Saskatchewan want to be trading partners with America and absolutely love America. It's the rest of Canada. It's these elbozos that got their elbows up and they've been propagandized. It's a damn shame. America is the one that has allowed them to create this socialistic society with all these welfare programs, not develop a military, and kind of detach from reality. That's where Canada is today. That's where a lot of the West is today.
But also hello to Real Fringe that I know is there on our UMBLE. But now let's actually get into a topic we've already been kind of covering, which is the paid off mainstream media. But the propaganda arm of the federal government and of Mark Carney has now made the stupidest decision they could have. And what on earth are they thinking?
But they need to understand that Albertans are done. We're leaving, and there's no more conversation to be had. I know that's upsetting to people.
Because if you didn't hear, well, Glenn Beck will tell you about it. Says, quote, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, or the CBC, now says that 9/11 wasn't a terrorist attack at all, just a hijacking that led to plane crashes. And that's a great way to rewrite history, as the Canadians always like to do.
And we're going to go into this. Canada is erasing their own history. At the same time, they're trying to propagandize their citizens. And now they're trying to rewrite American history.
Because it's not convenient for them and their future plans, I would say. But let's hear
Glenn Beck. And Glenn Beck has been absolutely on fire lately. We've been playing a lot of his clips. He's been absolutely fantastic, a cornerstone of the show.
And he's also been very supportive of Alberta's independence from a long time ago. He had Keith Wilson on about a year ago, and then subsequently after that.
9/11, according to the CBC now, 9/11 was not a terrorist attack. Okay? Now, let's just define terror. Terrorism is the calculated use of violence or the threat of violence to create general fear in the population and coerce a government or a society to achieve political, religious, or ideological goals. Okay? Terrorism. But the CBC says that that is not terrorist. It was a terrible day. 4 airplanes were hijacked by 19 terrorists, piloted by 2 of those, and they took 2 of those planes into the World Trade Center, destroying both buildings, blah, blah, blah. But the BBC says that that is not terrorism. That was a hijacking that ended in plane crashes. That's the CBC now.
And this is nothing but guilt and shame. And because of mass immigration, they want to take this stance, which is number one, going to infuriate the Americans trying to rewrite that history. But this is a stance I don't think ends anywhere good for the Canadians at this point. And this is the mainstream media. This isn't just Mark Carney here.
But that is fully subsidized and paid for by the federal government to be used as their propaganda arm.
Okay. All right, Canada. We see where you're going. And you know what? I'm not going with you. I'm not going with you. There is an invasion that is happening all over the world. The Western world has been invaded. Why is it the entire Western world is facing the same exact refugee problem, and it's only refugees who are men in their 20s? This is colonization. Or is it an invasion? Actually, I would suggest that it's an invasion. But the reason why everybody on the left always jumps over that word, it's not an invasion, it's not an invasion. You know why? Because invasions trump all immigration laws. That's why they can't say it's an invasion. But that's exactly what it is. If it is an invasion, then the laws that what you can do to send them home are very clear, and it's wide open. Canada, 9/11's not a terrorist. You know why? Because they're afraid. They're chicken. They're chicken. They're afraid of the people that they have let into their own gates. Here's what you need to know. This is a choice. I'm not going to call this a danger.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And they are scared. The amount of Black Bloc, Antifa, we see massive Palestinian and Iran support within Canada. The government does not want to stand up. They literally don't even want to stand up. They want to rewrite history at this point.
But again, the insult that it is that one of the most saddest and most consequential days and most talked about still days for the U.S. in the last few decades, I would say maybe even century, the fact that Canada and the CBC don't want to talk about it or want to change and rewrite history is insane. But we also see a lot of history rewriting within Canada itself, and it's become kind of a thing that they do now. Canada says, quote, Trump is such an a-hole for calling it late America. However, have you visited, I don't know, community center? And yes, that's what Canada does as well.
This is freaking Canada in a nutshell, tearing down its statues, renaming its streets, renaming its bridges, bringing guilt and shame to its people. Absolutely ridiculous. And they do it with a liberal progressive smile on their face, saying everybody needs to adopt this, otherwise we'll arrest you.
But renaming the lake is too far.
Hence the name Eta Nona Wastina. It translates to where they lived good and beautiful lives. Learning to say the name is just a small way we can all be accountable to healing our relationship with our nation's First Peoples. So let's go. Try it with me. Eta Nona Wastina. Eta Nona Wastina. Eta Nona Wastina.
Okay, and you can leave it there. And let's heal with the First Nations, but let's make the biggest enemy in the world, the one superpower directly to our south, an enemy. Absolutely ridiculous at this point. And Trump's doing Canada a favor by renaming that lake to Lake America at this point. That lets the rest of the world don't F with that lake.
Guilt, shame, and propaganda. But where does that lead you? It leads you to rename streets to the point where residents of that street can't even get their mail because the letters that you chose that were made up in the 90s somewhere on a UBC campus now are the name of your street. And this happened in Vancouver. We know because we used to live there. Canada says, how dare Trump rename it to Lake America? Anyway, have you ever been to that street in Kitsilano? It used to be called a very different thing, but now that's what they have to deal with.
Well, and when this first showed up, and this is a bit of an older article that came out, it was about a year ago, but they originally had that top name in black, and then nobody could actually mail any letters to the street because the letters didn't exist on a keyboard, so they had to rename it so people could get actually their bills, pay their mortgages, and other things, and nobody can say it at this point. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Do you know what the street used to be called? I believe it was called Trudge, but now it's called that or Musqueam View. And it's all due to the guilt and shame that is currently and continuously and has been for decades now imposed on Canadians that actually allows the control of the people and the further manipulation of them by a government that doesn't have their best interest at heart.
Well, and it goes right along with these land acknowledgements. Nobody thought they were serious. Everybody got indoctrinated. Everybody pressured everybody else to say it, especially where we used to live in downtown Vancouver. It was absolutely ridiculous, but there was a consequence to it. Now we're seeing private property rights absolutely disappear and be given away by provincial governments within Canada. And it's also being attacked on a federal level with the 30 by 30 program. You will own nothing and be happy is a thing in Canada. It is quickly becoming a reality.
So you start with thinking you're a very good person, doing the land acknowledgements and going along with everything they ask you to do, and you end up with your property title being toilet paper. But lastly, Brian Gertison says, quote, Freeland took a break from counting money in Ukraine to talk about her views on the trade war, because that's very important to know. She has a new book called Unreliable Boyfriend, which I'm pretty sure is what Carney was called when he was the governor of the Bank of England. And currently as well, Freeland repeats the lies as to the reasons why Carney pulled out of the trade negotiations and is questioned on why Canadians have to live under such a poor standard of living. Again, you're living in a third world country, you just haven't realized it yet.
Well, all the money that's being laundered right now is being laundered through Ukraine. Chrystia Freeland was strategically placed there. It's going in and then it's coming out. I think they want to affect the midterms with it. Chrystia Freeland is also very important to watch right now. She keeps spouting out about donut theory. We need to go around Donald Trump directly to the American people and turn the American people against Trump. This is something she says directly. Also, we had an article on a previous video where we talked about a article that Chrystia Freeland wrote, saying we need to run a psyop on the American people so they don't know what's really going on and vote against Trump there.
Very Chinese way of doing things, let's just say.
Those retaliatory tariffs on the U.S. are set to take effect on September 8th. Joining us now, Chrystia Freeland, our old friend, Canada's former Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. She's currently the CEO of the Rhodes Trust. And this October, she's out with a new book, Unreliable Boyfriend, an insider's view of dealing with a chaotic superpower, plutocrats, and other complicated people. We got a lot of questions to ask you, Chrystia. I want to just ask you about the overall state of the Canadian economy, too, and China and everything else. But do you know what happened when the talks broke down? Because President Trump seemed to sort of admit that he made some last-minute demands that kind of scuttled the deal. Do you know what actually went on?
And pause it for a minute. Now we're going to hear a line of BS coming out of her mouth, one thing after another. We'll dismantle some of it. It's a longer clip. We're just going to play a brief portion of it.
That's the BS and the lack of transparency that we continue to see as well from Carney and the rest of them.
But she is becoming a crucial figure because where she's strategically been placed for the globalist and Mark Carney.
I think, so great to be with you, Joe. And I think that Prime Minister Carney has been really clear about what happened. As he put it, the U.S. asked too much and gave too little. And he said that at the last minute, extreme demands emerged, touching on Canadian sovereignty, touching on cultural protection, which is
And pause it for a minute. Infringing on their sovereignty? No, they asked the same thing of Mexico to get into official trade negotiations, and then they built in a mechanism so Mexico wouldn't be subject to future tariffs. They don't want anybody trading with China right now, or they want to limit the impact. Mexico, on the other hand, is allowed to trade with other BRICS countries like Brazil, major contracts for oil going out to Brazil from Mexico. So America doesn't mind who you trade with. They are just trying to limit the amount of growth within their number one adversary being China.
In general, and particularly important for Quebec and for Francophone Canadians. So, and the thing I really want to say, Joe, is there are so many problems in the world. China is a real problem. I'm just back from Ukraine late last night. Russia is a huge problem. Iran is a huge problem. at a time when dictatorships are on the march, it is
Okay, and you can leave it there. And what I will say is the EU, the globalists are really big problems. Canada is a really big problem right now. Ukraine, with all the money laundering that's going through there, is a really, really big problem. And the last thing I'll say is Christina Freeland is probably the biggest problem because she's helping orchestrate this thing behind the scenes with the amount of money laundering that is going on.
Also funny how as she was saying, oh, the dictatorships are a big problem. Carney's face, big ass face is there right next to her. But don't forget to subscribe because again, it really does help us out. Thank you so much to everybody that has done so already. And now let me go back to your comments, which I see continue to come in. So thank you so much. And that is the whole point of doing it live as well, being able to talk to all of you. So Rage Against Machine says, we declare that the people are not the property of the government, nor are their rights gifts to be granted or withdrawn by political power, which is what they love and would love to continue to do, and why they continuously try to keep Canadians comfortable enough so they don't notice what they're actually doing. Rage Against Machine says our rights come from God, our authority from the consent of the governed, and our prosperity from the labor, ingenuity, and determination of the people. Why can't I read today? Very well put, Rage Against Machine. And Anya Zinsky says, once Alberta is independent, we will write our own history and remember the history that Canada has continuously tried to erase and get rid of. Because that's another thing Alberta can do. You can secure the actual facts in history that have been already erased by Canada itself. Well,
another important thing to put in there, and I heard part of the comment, was in the Constitution and a lot of the founding documents, we need to put God in there, because if you don't, what is the highest power in the land at that point? It becomes the government. You have to have some kind of mechanism that is above the government and keeps the government playing inside the guardrails. Well, and the guardrails are a non-moving moral foundation. What are the morals of society? And does the government constantly set them and can move them at will? Or do we try to set them with traditional Western values, Christianity, and God?
And Rage Against Machine says, independence to create a freer and more accountable government, not simply a different government. Yeah. And that's another thing that has to be fully ingrained into the people that are for Alberta independence. The fact that you as citizens, engaged citizens, are able to start working towards this as well, and why it's so important.
And reforming the media once we become an independent nation is important to build engaged citizens. Most countries want non-engaged citizens because they're easier to manipulate. Alberta needs to set the example of a nation that wants strong, powerful, independent, and free citizens.
Exactly. But next, Rage Against Machine says, Freeland the troll. And Anya Zinsky, thank you so much for the $2 super chat, saying, yes, God has to be above all.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, humans and people put themselves above others, and that's not what we want. Rage Against Machine says, I heard about the Nepal landslide. Rest in peace, poor people. Yes.
Absolutely.
And incredibly tragic. And as Anya Zinsky says, also, 2 days in a row, 2 slides for glaciers, prayers to the people there and all the families that lost loved ones.
Yeah.
And there were also quite a few tourists as well from several different countries too. I haven't looked fully into it, but yeah. But next, Holden, I almost said the full name. Holden says, Canada will collapse if Alberta stays or goes. True. Exactly. Yeah. That's the thing. And Alberta can save itself.
Let's not go down with the ship. I mean,
the ship's already
let's make it simple at this point. And if you are forever Canadian or you want to stay in Canada, just stay home on October 19th. Do you really want to go down with the ship?
Hold on. A2.0 says, and Democrats and protesters burning down buildings are mostly peaceful protests. Exactly. According to the CBC. And SEW, thank you so much again for the...
And the super chats really do help the channel. It helps us continue our work, so thank you.
Thank you so much for the $5 super chat, saying I love Canada, but I love America. Also, I visited Florida, Tennessee, and Michigan. America is a beautiful country.
Yeah, I was born in Canada and raised there for half my life, but the other half I was raised in the United States. I also lived in Florida, California, and a few other states. I absolutely love both countries. Not Canada so much these days. I love Alberta because it represents the same freedom values or Western values that America has. The rest of Canada is going down a dark path like a lot of the West is, whether it's Britain, the EU, Australia. They're going against free speech, against private property rights. They're arresting their citizens for speaking up. I mean, they are quickly adopting the Chinese model at this point.
Mm-hmm. But thank you so much. And I'm originally, in case you're new here, I'm originally from Mexico, lived 13 years in Canada, in Vancouver, and now moved back because saw how insane it was.
Well, that was the reason we were able to leave Canada and vote for our own independence quite a few years ago, before Alberta independence really had legs under it. And I don't want all of Canada to fail. Alberta can get out now and vote for its independence on October 19th.
Yes. And Philip Vespa says to Rage Against the Machine, save those comments. That's an excellent preamble for an Alberta constitution. And stay engaged, I would say, as an engaged citizen in the process. Ray Davis says OCCRP was a tool that CIA used to start the invasion. Philip Vespa says, what was that woman saying? I'll never know. That name.
Yeah.
The renaming of everything. Jeffrey Wolf, hello. Thank you for being here. Says, did you hear that the U.S. and Venezuela just closed an oil deal today? The U.S. just got $65 billion in oil reserves.
Yeah, we talked about it yesterday. We also brought it back up on this show. It's going to massively increase the strategic oil reserves of the United States, and it takes away a lot of the leverage Canada seems to think it has, but doesn't really have, because all the pipelines go into the United States before they feed back into Eastern Canada.
Mm-hmm. And Ray Davis with an actually prescient point, saying Canadians saying sovereignty, that would be a betrayal to the king. Exactly. Canada is ruled by a king. It will never be sovereign unless it's independent, which it doesn't want to do. Jeffrey Wolf says on August 28, 2026, President Donald Trump announced a deal granting the U.S. majority control of more than 65 billion barrels of Venezuelan oil reserves, which he labeled as the biggest oil deal in world history.
Well, and it's only going to get bigger year after year. The infrastructure is not in good shape in Venezuela, yet they're still able to cut that deal. As a lot of investment comes in from American oil companies, they're going to rebuild that infrastructure, and that's going to keep the strategic oil reserves of the United States completely full at this point. They might even reverse the pipelines from Texas to flow up to a lot of the northern states. Right now, they flow south because of Albertan oil.
And Philip Vespa says, I don't think, Mr. Speaker, in her squeaky voice, Freeland realizes that Mr. Greer and Mr. Lutnick debunked these false claims by Carney. Because it's not convenient for her to actually admit that. And Holden says Freeland is an absolute clown. Her hands look dry from all the money she is washing.
Yeah, she is an absolute clown, but I'm telling you, she is becoming a very strategic piece, not just for Carney, but for the globalist overall. After she's done in Ukraine, I'm sure she's going to fail up.
On that note, because she was kind of like the architect of Canada's downfall, let's actually talk about Canada's downfall, because it's insane to me that there's no more Canadians demanding transparency about what happened with the trade deal and why Canada walked away from the table. It could be the French, it could be the this, it could be the that, but there's no clear answers. Enough! Time is up, Mr. Bankerman.
I'm angry. I've had enough of these people.
And let's start with this from Juno News saying, quote, on Ratio, Rebel News is as relevant, suggests that Prime Minister Mark Carney walked away from a U.S. trade deal to influence the midterms while pointing to his ties with China. He actually does want to meddle in the midterms, saying there's no denying that Carney is strong with China.
Well, and we are going to get into an economic collapse, but I kind of wanted to show the conservative perspective here. And we have two different conservative perspectives. We have Ezra Levant from Rebel News, who supports Alberta independence. And then we have the other gentleman there. Oh, God, what is his name again?
Sorry, I dropped my headphone. His name, I don't know.
Right there on the left-hand side.
Harrison
Faulkner. Harrison Faulkner is representative of conservatives that are starting to get their elbows up. I think Alberta independence is the litmus test for if you are a real base conservative that actually wants freedom and what's good for the people. Do you want to do for yourself, or do you want to trust in politicians that are never going to really get the job done? Because that's where the Conservative Party is to this day. And this conversation is very interesting. And I'm glad Ezra kind of puts him in his place. I wish there were more national conservatives that were taking the Ezra attitude than the other attitude here. The Harrison attitude.
I guess the problem, though, really is, you hinted at this. This is the economic pain that Canadians are about to face from this. And I'm pretty sure we would all agree that Mark Carney wasn't going to turn around if there wasn't any tariff threats from Donald Trump. If Donald Trump didn't levy any tariff threats, I'm pretty sure that Canada wasn't about to turn around and say, we're going to just tariff America right away and we're going to see what happens, right? It was started by Donald Trump, and we really... Are you sure about that? I am sure. I really don't think the Canadian government, Ezra, would without provocation just decide to rip up CUSMA and start trying to
And
attack the
pause
United
it.
States.
And I've complimented Harrison for a long time. I used to watch him a lot, but recently he has got his elbows up. He wants to go dollar for dollar tariffs. He wants to protect monopolies in Canada. He sounds more like a liberal these days on non-cultural issues when it comes to economics than even Mark Carney.
This was started by the U.S. Donald Trump did kick this off. And so I'm not saying that Mark Carney isn't personally responsible, but would you say that the blame lies mostly with Carney here?
Hey, can I throw something at you just out of the blue here? So we've been trying to get this trade deal with America for a year and a half, right? And the U.S. midterms are just around the corner, just a couple months away. And there's a lot of cross-pollination between Canada's PMO and the Democrats. In fact, Carney's chief of staff or executive director, I forget her title, is a Democrat operative. You see liberal MPs campaigning in the States. You see explicit talk about running ads to meddle in the midterm. So is it hard to believe, is it implausible that Canada, which has already waited 18 months anyways, might decide, well, let's just wait a couple more months. Let's work with our friends in the States. Let's get our CBC to interview Gavin Newsom and all the Americans. Let's really have an American narrative here just for 2 months. And then afterwards, we'll do a deal. I spoke yesterday with the U.S. Ambassador, Pete Hoekstra, and his tone was, we're ready to talk again if the Canadians are. Like he essentially said that. He said, come back when you want to talk. And I think Mark Carney is going to come back and get the deal. But he's first going to have this 2 months of being the world's anti-Trump because he actually does want to meddle in the midterms. Let me throw one more thing at you. And I don't know if you know this, but I recently discovered a speech that Mark Carney gave in 2019 when he was the head of the Bank of England. And you can find this on the Bank of England website. He made the argument 7 years ago that the world should get off the U.S. dollar and it should no longer be the currency of choice for invoicing, for reserves. And he suggested that the most likely successor would be the Chinese renminbi.
And you can leave it there, but it kind of shows the break in different ways of thinking from conservatives and an economic perspective. There is I would say national conservatives at this point want an elbows up approach, want a Mark Carney approach, and that includes Poilievre at this point. Yes, cultural issues, they are much divided and have a difference with the liberals, but when it comes to economics, they want war with America at this point when it comes to tariffs, and it's absolutely ridiculous. We need more conservatives like Ezra, like this show, like people in Alberta that don't expect politicians to fix everything for us. We want to fix things for ourselves as citizens, and that's why we're going to vote for independence on October 19th.
And that we can see through the transparent at this point lies as to why they're not being transparent. And again, if it was just Canada trying to do a deal with the US all by itself, then you would say, okay, well, maybe we could. But we have the opposite view in Mexico. We've seen what Mexico has done. We've seen what Mexico has been able to accomplish. Mexico releases papers every time they sit down. They release what they talked about. They release the terms of the deal. They talk, and also a while ago, way before Canada ever even tried to start talking, they went into official negotiations with the U.S., which Canada still hasn't done to this day.
Well, official negotiations allowed them to build in a mechanism so they're not subject to future threats of tariffs. And they also give, like you said, daily readouts of everything that was discussed in their negotiations.
Mm-hmm. But why might Carney and his government not want to be transparent? Because it's not convenient for them, but also because there's plans behind the scenes. Ryan Gerson says, quote, Peter McKay is correct. The very reason why they haven't released the details of the deal Carney walked away from is because it will expose the truth. Carney made up the reasons to walk away. He never wanted a deal.
Well, and I'm going to go into the short, medium, and long-term game plan of why Carney are playing these games with the USMCA and the Americans at this point. But let's watch this first.
And end up hurting Canadians in the long run.
Especially now that the talks have collapsed. And frankly, some of what the Prime Minister has said doesn't hold water. This reference to the Americans demanding sovereignty requests we do business with, that's already in the CUSMA. That's in the existing agreement. References to the French language, that's really not about anything other than digital taxes and an aspect that has nothing to do with French language or sovereignty. So yes, clarity, and I would suggest that one way to do that is to bring back Parliament. And PEI has done it, for example. Other provinces are contemplating it. That's the place where the people of Canada get answers, and they deserve answers given the impacts that this is going to have.
And they scuffled these negotiations, and the reason they're giving are complete BS. The real reasons they're doing it on a short-term level, Carney wants to get Liberals' elbows up again and win these by-elections that are coming up in Canada. In the midterm, they're actually focused on the American midterms. They want to interfere in the American midterms. You're seeing people being hired from the Hillary Clinton administration or former administration into the PMO's office. They're bringing massive amounts of consultants up there. And on a long-term level, and it's yet to be seen if they're actually going to try to do this, because this is a dangerous game. Are they going to try to slowly collapse the Canadian economy for federalization, to have provinces go to the federal government for bailouts in exchange for federal power? I think that's the short, medium, and long-term game plans for Mark Carney. The question is he willing to risk the future of Canada for these?
Yes. Quick and simple. And also to go further towards China, the European Union, but also towards a model of harder socialism, but also that just turns into communism eventually. And we've seen it happen over and over again when things start getting federalized or nationalized in other countries. But next, the food professor says, quote, if we took a moment to fully understand what President Trump is trying to accomplish, Canada might pursue a very different USMCA strategy. We're not even trying tariffs, may have not rebuilt America's food manufacturing sector yet, but they have forced manufacturers to adapt to higher input costs and become more productive.
Yeah, and I wanted to get into a couple of things of showing the Canadian economy collapsing on different levels we don't always talk about, because we talk on a daily basis about the major things that everybody's noticing, but he points out some things here that I don't think everybody knows, number one, and I will have a counterpoint to some of his points when he talks about the U.S. here.
Understand what the strategy is, to be honest. I just don't. And so we're trying to get closer to China, and certainly the Trump administration sees that as a problem. And we have visited, and to Carney's credit, we were able to eliminate tariffs on canola, but they did slap us on peas just recently with tariffs of 75%. And so that relationship is not clear to me right now.
Yeah, and pause it for a quick second. It's a bad trade relationship with China. China knows Canada's in a weak position, and they're going for the jugular. I thought maybe they would give some cherry contracts or some absolute rose-colored contracts, but they're not. They're playing hardball with the Canadians when it comes to EVs for soybeans and things like that.
Yes, the strategic partnership isn't really working out that strategically for Canada. It is kind of for China, but Canada continues to be left in the dust because of the stupid decisions that they make.
So what are we doing here? And so that's one thing. The other thing that I think needs to be recognized is our inability to understand exactly what President Trump is trying to achieve here. And I know that you just mentioned it, David, that, he wants to rebuild manufacturing in North America. He wants to focus more on onshoring, which to me is something that perhaps Canada should look into personally, because our processing sector is not very strong. It's quite anemic.
And pause it. And he released it, the American administration did, the National Security Strategy for the Western Hemisphere. He's looking to create the golden age for the Western Hemisphere, not just the golden age for America. Canada should get on board. It doesn't look like they are. So Alberta, it's up to Alberta to gain its independence and kind of get on board. The Shield of the Americas, which is Central and South America, are already on board with this. We're going full tilt. The Mexican economy is starting to turn around and look really good at this point.
And if you don't want to believe it, then just go look at the National Security Strategy released last November by the U.S. administration, and you'll understand and you'll see why a lot of the things that are happening right now that have people scratching their heads and being puzzled, they just lay it out right there, what the plan is and how to strengthen the rest of the continent would also strengthen the U.S. And we were seeing it happening quite quickly in Latin America.
But what we've done at the lab was to measure exactly how the Trump regime has changed North America's food manufacturing landscape. And this is something that hasn't been released yet. Because, of course, everyone's looking for job numbers and GDP in food manufacturing. Is the Trump approach working, really? Well, we've noticed a couple of things. One, no. So far, 18 months in, we're not seeing more jobs in America, in the United States, related to food manufacturing. We didn't look at...
And pause it for a moment here. And what he fails to understand, and what everybody's failing to understand, and why the next administration, whoever it is going to get credit for everything Trump did. These manufacturing facilities take a while to build. There's $19 trillion of investment rolling into the United States this year alone. They're building the manufacturing facilities. When it comes to the inputs for food and things, it's not, those jobs aren't counted. The construction jobs and all the add-on jobs to build the facilities, the actual jobs of the people working in the factories will come in the next couple of years. But you are seeing effects in other industries right now. There is a huge manufacturing boom happening in the United States, and we're in the first phase, the construction of all these facilities.
So that's our field. However, and this is a big however, and this is a bit of a lesson for all of us. So with a tariff-happy president, okay, he's making not just food more expensive, but he's making inputs more expensive for manufacturers. If you're a manufacturer and you're managing a plant and you're seeing the cost of goods go up as you manage your, what are you going to do? You're going to reinvest in your plant. You're going to reinvest in robotics, automation, AI. You're going to make your plant more efficient. You're going to make your plant more productive. Things that we're not even talking about in Canada. So in the last 18 months, GDP per hour worked in America has gone up 2% in food manufacturing. Guess what happened in Canada during that same period? It's gone down 5.8%.
Oh my, going in the opposite direction.
And you can leave it there. And something I'll say here is this would work right in with mass immigration as well. You don't need mass immigration when you bring in a lot of automation for a lot of these businesses. You can do more with less. You already have a baseline of American citizens. I like to see them get the jobs, not foreigners through H-1B visas or anything else at this point.
And also what's insane regarding food and the cost of food in Canada is that if you're currently in Canada, you know it's getting insane. You know that the prices are cheaper in the US, even if Carney and everybody else try to convince you otherwise. But even with things like wine and the whole fight that they were having regarding alcohol, Table Salt says, even with the 50% tariff, BC wine is cheaper in the US than in Canada. So if you're like your wine, then go to the US.
And this is crazy because the Canadian government is taxing its own businesses and its citizens to death. This is why the majority of Canadians that open new businesses open them in the United States, because they know the long-term cost of running a business in Canada. It's literally cheaper to sell your products in the United States.
Which is why that market is so important and why it's
even
ridiculous.
With a 50% tariff, it still is.
And why it's ridiculous that Canada has so forcefully tried to hinder their own people and their own production and their own products and everything else. And as we continue, please don't forget to subscribe. It really does help us out. Thank you to everybody that has subscribed. If you haven't done so yet, do it now. And also like the video too. But now let's go back to your comments because I see, thank you so much. There's quite a few super chats. This never happens. Rage Against the Machine, thank you so much for the $10 super chat.
Wow, thank you.
We seek no dominion over another people. We claim no right to diminish the liberty of our neighbors, the USA. We seek only the responsibility of governing ourselves. The Republic of Alberta, let's effing go.
Absolutely. And I will say, as much as I do like the United States and I love the administration that's in now, anybody that watches our American Greatness show knows that every 4 or 8 years you run a risk. Next time it might be Gavin Newsom and AOC. This is one of the reasons Alberta does need to build long-term contracts with an administration that's favorable to them. So if an unfavorable administration comes in, we still have cash flow coming in. We also need to build a military. We also need to be tough on mass immigration so the voting bloc doesn't change. Alberta has voted conservative for the last 93 years. That's one of the big benefits of becoming its own free and independent nation.
SCW also, thank you so much for the $2 super chat. And it's for Rage Against the Machine, saying, well said, Rage Against the Machine. And Steve Surfaro, hello, thank you for being here. Thank you for the $4.99 super chat, saying, I'm still astounded by your news analysis from the forced federalizations to false messaging. You two deserve 1,000+ subscribers. Thank you so much. 1,000 times subs. Thank you so much.
Well,
and Steve Surfaro has really been hyping us up lately, so thank you so much as well. I've noticed, so thank you.
We're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers by December. I don't know if we can do it, but I'm damn sure trying.
Yes, and we'll continuously try. But thanks to all of you, we're getting closer, actually. And Yazinski says, amen. So well said. God has a victory. The closer we get, I'm guessing. Rage Against Machine says, Carney is responsible for this. He wants this war. Brookfield and his cartel buddies make bank. Exactly. I mean, they do end up benefiting.
Well,
the ones that don't.
I think it's much bigger than that. These globalists have much bigger plans here, and Trump is throwing monkey wrenches into everything they do. If they follow up the Trump administration with the JD Vance or Rubio, who was in the previous administration, that's it for globalism. Their plans are crushed. They're going to put everything they have into these midterms and the 2028 election because they can't have that. They do have a bailout strategy, and their bailout strategy is Canadian national resources, federalize them, and then bail out the EU with those by hooking Canada to the hip to the EU.
And we've been banging on this drum for
well, and then the next section we're going into is Canada tiptoeing closer to the EU. So we're going to lay that right out in a moment.
Yeah. But Todd, hello, Todd. Thank you for being here. Says, just got here from Fight for Canada. Zach was live. 5 amazing Canadian freedom fighters. You guys should check him out and hook up with him or talk with him. Yes. Thank you for the suggestion. We'll look into it. Todd says, no, it's asking something. Hold on. Where were we? Raging the Machine says we're going to declare a quote unquote unilateral declaration of independence.
We have to be ready to use that if they don't give us a binding referendum. And in order to use that, we need a leader in there that's going to be willing to do that. Danielle Smith is not even going to be willing to call a binding referendum. So what in the hell are we going to do? Go ask Danielle Smith to declare unilateral independence? She's not going to freaking do it. We need a Keith Wilson or somebody in there that is committed to this thing. And we need an American administration that will back that play if it comes down to that last resort. And after we win this non-binding referendum, I think the federal government's going to really wake up, say, we're not giving them the binding referendum. And that's going to be the point. We need to realize when that happens, and we can't take time delays. We need a binding referendum by the spring, or we need to make a unilateral declaration of independence.
Because it's an existential threat, and they don't think they won't do everything they possibly can to try to stop it. Rage Against the Machine, thank you so much for the confidence in us. Says, you can do it, 5,000 subscribers, let's effing go. And Todd says, if you come here and don't like and subscribe, you're an El Bozo and a commie. Yes, exactly. We did have some of those in the chat earlier.
Yeah, we're getting more and more of those guys.
Well, I guess they're scared now because they see that it's making more and more sense to have an independent
Well, maybe
Alberta.
they're blue sky bots.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Tracy Walker, hello, says, I've never been so excited to get far away from the Canada that has become, I love the Canada that it was. Alberta will restore the values that Canada was founded upon. And that's exactly right and correct. I mean, Alberta still has and wants to continue to enact and embrace those as Canada erases them.
Absolutely. Even immigrants that are immigrating into Canada are going, what the hell is this when they get there? And then they're going back home because the dream of Canada they were sold is not there. On the other hand, a lot of them that I used to work with before I fled Canada, which was a ton, it was all Indians I worked with basically by the end. I had minimum wage jobs. I had to have 4 of them in order to save enough money to leave. But they were all waking up. They said, I'm not waiting for my PR. I'm going home. Some of them said they were going to hop over the border to the United States. That their long-term game plan was always the United States. They were coming to Canada to go to the US because it offers more economic freedom.
Yeah. Philip Vespa says, this was not started by the U.S., Harrison. Talking to Harrison Faulkner, the dairy cartel had these tariffs on American consumers forever. You want to be a uniparty shill? Do it somewhere else.
Absolutely. And that's what we see happening to a lot of content creators in national Canada. They're becoming conservative shills, and the conservatives are going to be frog marching them down federalism pretty soon. We have special creators within Alberta Independence because they're actually independent creators. We have no allegiance to a party because every single party, every single politician is lined up against Alberta Independence.
Jeffrey Wolf says, if Canadians don't know this, all trade deals of the United States are negotiated by the President of the United States. Yeah.
Not the King of Canada.
No. Yvette DeVoe says, I think the pleb is all about Polyev and not separation. I like him, but never, not this way. Unfortunately, dear Polyev just isn't the answer anymore. We're way past this savior story, aren't we?
Yeah, and I'm sorry to say it, most channels with big subscriber bases want access to conservative personalities, and they also want subscribers on a national level, meaning they want hundreds of thousands of subscribers, so they're not willing to go against the conservative party line, and it's a damn shame. Yeah. There's only a few big creators. Clyde Do Something's actually one of them. So good on him. My hat's off to him. He supported Alberta independence from early on, and he's taken a lot of stances that other conservatives wouldn't. A lot of the conservatives in Canada, when it comes to content creation, are easily exposed because they just take the conservative line.
They know what's convenient for them.
Yeah.
And we're seeing very similar stances on the U.S. from the retarded right.
I'll take the conservative line on certain issues, like cultural issues, but when it comes to the big issues of federalization, no way, no how.
Exactly. And Holden.
Oh, thank you.
Almost said it again. Thank you so much for the $5 super chat, saying Carney is heavily invested in 5 of the 7 hedge funds and contractors slated to rebuild Ukraine. The more destruction, the richer Carl gets of the back end.
Yeah, if Russia wins that war, they're not going to rebuild anything there.
And they have little Christia there right now.
Yeah.
William Robel also, hello, says Trump just, we've been talking about this. Trump just announced the largest oil deal in the world history with Venezuela. How much do you think this had to do with the failed trade deal?
There's no leverage Canada has. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. Not just the Venezuelan thing. I already knew that was in Trump's back pocket. But the amount of restrictions and sanctions that are on Russia, if Canada ever tried to really hurt the United States, they would just lower some of those sanctions and buy off of Russia in order to get them through the hard times and break Canada's back economically. It's not only America's allies that trade with them, their enemies would trade with them as well because they have such a large market and so much money.
And Rage Against Machine, and this is unfortunate, but just goes to prove the point, says, I wanted to start a manufacturing plant here, but no way I'm doing that here now. Exactly.
Yeah.
Nobody can. And Yvette says, yes, Gaia damn shame is the understatement of the year, isn't it? God. And just quickly on over and RU and BLE. Hold on. We have time. It's 6:30.
Yeah.
Hold on. Where are we? K4U says, I have a song stuck in my head. It goes something like this. Alberta independence. Let's effing go. Howdy, folks. Hope everyone is well. I'm still working. So I'm in and out. Thank you for being here. And PBE says, your liberals are far left nut jobs. This PBE is from the US. Your conservatives are normal Democrats outside of Alberta. I don't see any real conservatives up there in Canada. Too woke, too left, and too nice and progressive.
Well,
and brainwashed.
You don't really see them because there are a few in Saskatchewan and Alberta, but they're few and far between, and they're censored. So it's really hard to get those voices out there. They really don't want these voices from Alberta independence getting out to the rest of Canada because we won't hold the conservative line, and we're talking common sense here. Federalization is socialism, communism, and the Chinese model, period.
And hold on. KB4U says, erasing your history is a step to becoming communist. Yeah, that's what they did. That's the entire purpose of a lot of the things that they did over in China, but also in other countries. PBE says, hijacking an airplane is a definition of a terrorist. Delta Force was created to fight terrorists. Ask how many countries have been BOMB'd. And, okay, it got confusing. Sorry. Sorry. Gracie M. Hello says, hi from the US. Hello. Thank you for being here. See, there's people with common sense over here. But shall we go into what's happening with the European Union and with Alberta and the world? Because Alberta's stance right now within the world is very important. Hold on. Well, it looks like Canada broke up with the United States and already had its side chicks lined on the side, but we all know what happens when you break up with the one to go with the excuse. And exactly as it sounds, as unfortunate as it sounds, the Globe and Mail continuing to tout this as, quote, opinion, Europe must stand with Canada against Trump.
And there's two things I've been talking about for a long time before anybody else was. That was Canada moving closer and closer to the EU. When I first started talking about that, people said I was crazy. And when I first started talking about federalization, they said the same thing. But elbows up is going global with the globalists here.
Exactly. And might it be that those two things are even more connected than people are even talking about yet? NXT EU says, quote, a majority of Canadians would like to join the EU as of 2026. Major newspapers are even saying it has become a mainstream opinion. What do you think? Should Canada join the European Union, join the EFTA, or become closer step by step?
This is why Alberta needs out now. Before they break the back of Alberta, federalize Alberta, and use them as a bailout plan, not just for Canada, but for the EU as well. I completely believe these statistics. This elbows up liberal crowd would vote to become part of the EU. We're going to go into the pitfalls of the EU through a fantastic meme I picked up earlier, and it's just ridiculous how broken the EU is. An unelected body of officials running right over you, multiple layers layers of government. So your own government has no sovereignty. This was supposed to be an economic alliance. It's no longer an economic alliance. They're pushing mass immigration and an invasion right through the front door against the people's will.
But we also hear a lot of talk about the middle powers from Mark Carney. It's actually the middling powers, because that's how badly they're doing it. That's how badly they need each other. The EU needing Canada, but mostly Alberta's resources, and Canada needing just, I guess, the badge of honor of being European. That's what they really want. Melissa says, quote, so basically many Canadians are accepting to become the 28th EU state, but even considering the 50th state of America is an attack on our sovereignty.
Alberta wants independence. Canada wants to be part of the EU, and America is going to break Canada's back so much to the point Canada's going to wish they could be the 51st state.
But also, on that note of sovereignty, one of our subscribers also said, Canada has a king. Canada is not sovereign. Yeah. And it's about time that people get that through their thick skulls as well. But Mr. Bench says, Carney calls Canada the most non-European European country. That shouldn't be flattering. He wants Canada pulled closer to the EU after walking away from trade talks with the USA and throwing Canada deeper into a tariff war. Carney is looking across the Atlantic.
And we're going to play this whole thing. It's pretty funny, and I actually checked into a lot of it. I didn't even know. I mean, I knew the EU was broken because of its bureaucracy, but they just spit pure facts, but they do it in a very comedic way. But everything is absolutely true here.
So this is how the European Union works.
Thanks for joining me. What is the European Union?
Well, it's a union of countries in Europe.
A union of roughly the 50 countries in Europe?
27.
27 what?
The EU is 27 countries. It's very simple.
So not all of Europe?
No.
So what is the union?
Well, Chris, it's a political and economic union where nations share laws and trade rules, right to live and work, and borderless travel.
So borderless travel for the EU?
No, that's Schengen.
What's Schengen?
Borderless travel in the EU.
And take the quality down if you can.
Thanks for joining me.
Let me try to fix it. The video sometimes reloads. Apologies for that. Let's start again because it's funny.
Thanks for joining me. What is the European Union?
Well, it's a union of countries in Europe.
A union of roughly the 50 countries in Europe?
27.
27 what?
The EU is 27 countries. It's very simple.
So not all of Europe?
No.
So what is the union?
Well, Chris, it's a political and economic union where nations share laws and trade rules, right to live and work, and borderless travel.
So borderless travel for the EU?
No, that's Schengen.
What's Schengen?
Borderless travel in the EU.
All of the EU?
No.
All of Europe?
Absolutely no.
Well, what then?
Chris, Schengen is 29 countries. It's very simple.
2 more added from the EU?
No. Bulgaria, Cyprus, Ireland, and Croatia are in the EU but not in the Schengen.
Okay.
And Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Iceland, and Norway are not in the EU but are in Schengen. It's very simple, Chris.
It's anything but that. So there will be passport control going from France to Ireland?
Yes, because Ireland have a common travel area with a very naughty United Kingdom.
Right, the travel from France to Switzerland is fine because they're in the Schengen even though not in the EU.
Correct.
What's the single market?
Eliminating trade barriers and allowing for the freedom of movement, goods and services and capital.
Just for the European Union?
I can't believe you're not getting this, Chris. Liechtenstein, Iceland and Norway plus the EU is the EEA. That's in there too.
And what about Switzerland?
Well, Switzerland are not very sure, so they sit on the fence, but they're also in because of the part of the European Free Trade Association, Chris. It's easy.
Oh my God. What about currency?
Maybe use the euro.
Where?
In the Eurozone.
Isn't that just the EU?
Chris, why are you making this complication? The Eurozone is 21 countries.
Only 21 countries use the euro?
No, 27.
Well, there's 27 European Union nations, right?
They are not the same, Chris. How is he not getting this?
What are you looking at?
Hungary, Czechia, Denmark, Poland, Romania, Sweden are in the EU but do not use the euro. And the micro-states like Vatican City, San Marino, Andorra and Monaco use the euro under special agreement.
So who are the other two?
They're Kosovo and Montenegro.
They have applied to become part of the European Union?
Yes, but Spain does not think Kosovo is a country, so we have to wait.
Great. Is Greenland part of the EU?
No.
But they're part of the Kingdom of Denmark, which is in the EU.
Chris, Greenland is not in the EU, but their citizens are EU members. I mean...
Right, okay. What about the United Kingdom?
They wish they never left us. Not Eurozone, not EU, not Schengen, not EEA, not EFTA.
But still in Europe.
Unfortunately, but they will be back.
French Guiana in South America is officially part of France.
France is part of the EU.
Right, so Switzerland, which is in the middle of Europe, is not part of the EU, but a state in South America is.
I told you, Chris, it's very simple.
If you say so.
Oh, and there are 24 languages of the European Union.
English being one of them?
Yes.
Even though the UK left?
It's still an official language thanks to Ireland.
Ireland helping the English. Well, they'll be thrilled with that.
And remember, Ireland is not part of Schengen because...
The naughty UK, yes, you mentioned that. How does the European Union function?
Oh, Chris, no one is saying that it functions correctly.
Thanks.
And that was absolutely fantastic. And where's Canada going to fit in all that? The Schengen? Or are there going to be a new little alliance of other little countries within the EU? Their natural resources are definitely potential bailout for the EU. Ukraine and its money laundering wasn't even brought up in any of that. How long until they're in there? Maybe they'll bring the Ukraine and Canada in at the same time, and then Canada can officially bail out the Ukraine.
But the EU has been doing poorly and has been mismanaging itself and its countries, and within the countries, their own governments have also mismanaged their countries. And this is why it might be a good idea for them to have Canada join, because Canada has a lot of natural resources, a lot of them unexploited and unused as of yet. But if Carney is able to federalize them all, well, then he can have a bigger offer and a bigger package to offer to the EU so they can join.
Yeah.
Because the EU really needs to be bailed out. But next, Eric Doherty says, quote, wow, Ambassador Mike Waltz reveals Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney is trying to weaponize the trade policy with the U.S. to tank Trump in the midterms per internal discussions. Carney is a traitor.
America is hyped to what is going on with the globalists, the European Union, Mark Carney, China and Mark Carney. All roads lead through Mark Carney. The Democrats lead through Mark Carney as well. How big of a splash does he want to make in the midterm? Because that's going to dictate how big the fall is after the midterms, because America is starting to take notice now.
One. Number two, in the case of Canada, I have spoken with Secretary Bessent, with our great trade rep, Jameson Greer. The deal was basically done, except that then Prime Minister Carney started to realize this was bad politics for him. He has run on being the tough guy against Trump. Elements of the deal, which was a fair deal on all sides, started to leak out. And suddenly he sends in some of his political team on top of the negotiating team and pulls out and starts spinning. One of the pieces of the spin, to your point on China, was that we were demanding that Canada not enter into other types of trade agreements. That's absolutely not true. What we said, what the team said was, look, if we're going to give you very favorable tariff status, we're going to give you the best deal of any other country.
And pause it for a moment. And it's obvious what happened here at this point. The Americans are pissed and it's leaking out all over the place. And everybody is saying the same thing. The story is not changing from these sources. Now, the big question is this a short, medium, or long-term strategy? If it's a short-term strategy, that means he's done this just to win the by-elections in Canada. If it's a midterm strategy, that means he wants to affect the American midterms, and there will be consequences for that. And if this is a long-term strategy, that means federalization of Canada's natural resources at the cost of the people and the sovereignty of Canadians.
With the possibility of joining the EU.
Within the world, you can't then let China take advantage, what they call transshipment, and start dumping their goods into Canada just to dump their goods in the United States. And we're right back where we've been for many, many administration. So you've got to raise, Canada, your tariffs on China, importantly, like Mexico has done. And I have to tell you what, in contrast to Prime Minister Carney, Scheinbaum down in Mexico has worked well with us, has established a good relationship with the president, is working with us, not just on cartels and national security, but also on these trade issues. At the end of the day, President Trump's going to put the American worker first.
And she goes, yeah, she's not saying anything. Yeah, she's not saying anything. She's a far left ideologue, and she would normally fit right in with Mark Carney, but she's not saying a word because she knows what's best for the future of Mexico. And although I don't agree with a lot of her policies, she's handled these trade negotiations absolutely magnificently. Apples for apples comparison to Canada, who went the wrong way. And
actually entered the official trade negotiations, which Canada never did.
Yeah.
Still hasn't done.
Well, the Americans are waking up. You've waking up a sleeping giant. If they don't get in line before the midterms and they start playing around with these midterms, it's going to be hell to pay for Canada.
Because lastly, as Sean Hannity says, or RMC says, quote, Fox News, Sean Hannity on Canada's rejection of the trade deal, saying Olivia Chow is highlighted, supporting cutting off power to the U.S. If you don't know who Olivia Chow is, she is the mayor of Toronto. Very similar to what Rob Ford was saying before he got scared on there with Wolf Blitzer.
Well, and we actually played these clips that they're going into, and the American media is now taking notice. If this continues on and Mark Carney keeps playing games, Americans might get their elbows up and start playing their own games. And what does that mean? That means they will absolutely crush Canada if they wanted. They haven't even been paying attention at this point.
And again, with these threats, they're using Alberta as a pawn also.
But not too far north, as 90% of Canadians actually live close to the U.S. border. Many come here for health care, even though they have free health care there. Now, in Canada, they rely on this country, the United States, your country, for revenue, for military protection, for oil refineries, for technology, medical, pharmaceutical advancements. And how are we repaid for our friendship and for our kindness? Now, for years before Donald Trump, was president, the only thanks we ever got were massive tariffs. And now we're getting hit with a lot of threats and a lot of anger and a lot of disdain. Any moment President Trump, he attempts to negotiate a free, fair, reciprocal trade deal, well, this is what happened.
And pause it for a minute. The clip they were about to show is originally from CNN. And when we showed it, I said even the CNN commentator was shocked, as it would be an attack on the American people. But now that other media organizations are picking this up, this could become a real thing. I'm going to keep my eye on this.
This is an ultra woke Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow.
Doug Ford also told the Associated Press that if this fight gets worse, the way he put it is everything is on the table, including cutting off electricity from Ontario going into the United States. Do you support that move?
Well, whatever it takes. Whatever it takes. Upping the price of electricity, we have to get attention because this cannot continue.
Proactively cutting off electricity going into the United States. You would support that move as a measure to get the U.S. to the negotiating table?
Well, I think whatever our premier needs to do.
Now,
pause it for a moment. Whatever it takes, we need to get attention. You're going to get attention, and it is not going to be the right kind of attention. You're going to find out who Canada's daddy really is, and it isn't Mark Carney. It isn't the King of Canada. It's Donald Trump, and you've woken him up, and after the midterms, you may have to pay the price.
Who needs enemies? But it does get worse. At the outset of these negotiations earlier this year, Canada's far-left prime minister, he just jetted off to Beijing, where he promoted a new strategic partnership, with the communist Chinese, the very same China that invaded Canada's sovereignty with at least one high-altitude spy balloon. But by the way, no problem, because the U.S. came to the rescue. We shot it down because Canada, they don't have the capability of shooting it down. Needless to say, Canada has totally lost the plot. Now, maybe if they are ever threatened or attacked, does America say, well, you're not good partners, you're on your own? Now, all of this is a warning of what will happen to our country 69 days from now if radicalized Democrats get their way and win a midterm. Canada's become so woke, so far left, so anti-Trump, so radical socialist left, and they've become crazy climate alarmists, and they're wrapped up in this idiotic land acknowledgement, whatever scheme of theirs, gender theory, that they seem to view communism, and the communist Chinese as a better partner than the U.S.
And you see how that entire narrative was laid out there about China, the relationships with China and other foes as well. If Canadian politicians keep making dumb statements like Doug Ford, like Olivia Chow, and the Americans keep laying this out for the American people themselves are going to start noticing Canada and asking for action of Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm. And this is what happens when you leave the one for just, chasing tail to whoever will give it to you in your strategic partnership with China. But don't forget to subscribe again. It really does help us out, and like the video. Thank you so much. And now let's go to Super Chats because we got a few. Steve Farrell, thank you so much for the $9.99 Super Chat. Saying 10 years ago, I attended global security shows in Brussels, the EU seat. I'm glad I got some Belgian waffles before the crime explosion. What about Save the EU Act? Oh yeah, I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah, maybe we'll go into that.
Yeah. I finally learned how to say her name. I really like her.
Yeah, it's a shame. A lot of these politicians that are getting in positions of power that are right-wing are becoming compromised. Giorgia Meloni is one of them. I used to be a big fan of her. There's so much leverage through the EU banking system on that country. She's been compromised. Also, the new lady coming out of France that's supposed to win, a lot of people are starting to see through her. She's still the best option, so hopefully she wins, but I don't expect much. It's kind of like a Danielle Smith, where she talks a good populist game, but then flips.
But yes, I do like what they're trying to do with the Save EU Act. Hopefully, though someone will pay attention. But SEW, thank you so much also for the $5 super chat saying, oh dear, I would rather be the 51st state than be in the EU.
Alberta wants to be a free and independent nation, but at this point, for the rest of Canada, the 51st state looks a hell of a lot better than the EU. The EU is a failed bureaucracy that takes the sovereignty of its countries and wants to start World War III with Russia. Ridiculous. That was
for their own benefit.
That was the original plan. There's multiple documents showing how they wanted to divide up Russia and take their natural resources, so Europe could be the center of power again. That would have been $79 trillion of resources, according to these documents. It was a lot harder than they thought, and now they're looking at Canada as the secondary option. And the King of Canada, along with Mark Carney, seem all too willing to just hand it over at this point.
Because do you know how many unexploited resources Canada has and how much money that could amount to for the EU if they have a strategic partnership as well?
Well, it would basically bail out globalism after Donald Trump completely crushed it, or almost completely crushed it. If we can follow it up with another administration that will follow through with these same policies, we can crush it.
But John B says the EU, SUCKS, behind. And Rage Against the Machine says these polls are BS. I don't know. There's enough elbows up people that might think the EU is the best thing ever. I mean, at this point, I'm not surprised on the stupidity of a lot of Canadians. Todd says the EU can kiss your behind. Yeah, same here. And Yazinski says, join the EU, not this girl. My elbows are so much down that I'm getting skinny. Well, good. I'm glad. And hold on, because thank you so much, Holden. Almost said it again. Thank you so much, Holden, for the $10 super chat saying President Trump renamed the Gulf of Mexico. Mexico said, whatever, let's talk. He renamed Lake Ontario, and Canada fell off their high chair and threw their food. Mexico said, I mean, they protested, but that was about it.
With Mexico is more of a strategic thing. Trump is reorganizing the world economy. So energy comes out of the United States, being oil, natural gas, things like that. Most of that is going to be placed within the Gulf of America. So he kind of there was a strategic reason for renaming that. That being said, when it came to Lake Ontario, it was just to get under the Canadians' skin. And at this point, I appreciate anybody that can get under Mark Carney's skin.
Yeah,
and Alberta Independence is getting under their skin as well.
Because it's an existential threat.
Yeah.
But Yazinski, I just wanted to comment that said, join the EU, not this, but my elbows are so much down that I'm getting skinny. Maybe Rosemary Barton should try your diet. Advice. Hold on. No. Come on. Steve Savaro says, make it stop, make him sell Belgian waffles before. And Rage Against the Machine says, my family originally came from Belgium. I do like Belgian waffles. There was a good place in Vancouver. What was it called?
Well, you got the AFD in Germany coming up. It's at least some kind of ray of hope or something. I think in order to save Europe, the EU is going to have to crumble and break apart at some point.
John B says, China is not going to dump their crappy products that last 2 weeks into America. Well, that's what they're trying to avoid. Steve Safaro says, most of us, but not enough to guarantee victory at the midterms. And Todd says, it's called FAFO. F around and find out.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, Canada's going to continue to find out and then continue to blame Trump because they don't understand.
Well, and there's a huge midterm convention coming up. It's the first one in history. The Republicans are throwing it. The Democrats are out of money, so they can't do anything to kind of counter it. The Republicans have almost $1 billion in their war chest right now. Massive amounts of money was raised from the RNC through Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and other sources. If they spend all that or even half of that, there's a good chance we win the House or a Senate, or at least gain some seats. If you listen to the mainstream media at this point, it's going to be a blue wave. I'd bet against that.
Mm-hmm. John B says carbon tax equals fraud. Yes, it does. And Todd says carbon tax and capture equals Alberta independence. Exactly. We don't participate in that scam, us Albertans, because you have your head screwed on right, and you understand that that's just basically money laundering at this point for the federal government. Grazium says, join the EU. Do you know Germany is leaving or has left? Well, somebody should inform Carney.
Well, you have to look, it was 57%. You figure if every single Liberal votes for it, which they obviously would in Canada, you have a lot of elbows up Conservatives that hold the line. I could see them having a good view of the EU as well. And the independents, when it comes to the Green Party or NDP, they're definitely voting to get join the EU. So that 57% seems actually fairly realistic inside of Canada to me. Any other country would be smart enough to say hell no.
Oh, the troll came back and I wanted to read a message because I wanted to call him a retard. Hold on. Let me try to find it because it was really funny. Comedy almost. I'll try to find it as we go. But
we can read it over on RUMBLE in a minute.
yes. Because now they're fighting with the trolls, so it's harder to find the messages. But Grazium says, admin has taken notice for over a year. It's just now all over our news. Not sure.
Yeah, we got a super chat there. Thank you.
Did.
Yeah, Holden.
Yes. Holden again. Thank you so much for the $2 super chat saying it's easy to get under the skin when it's paper thin.
And Holden's real name is Holden My Nuts.
That guy.
Well, he gave so many super chats. I thought he would appreciate it.
I said it once. I made a mistake once, but that's why we call them Holden.
Even on YouTube,
because I'm not falling for it.
Yeah.
Hold on. Philip Espa says it's not just the U.S. All of Central and South America will benefit from Venezuelan oil. Countries like Mexico and Argentina will become the new superpowers of the West.
Well, and the United States is actually paying for the Venezuelan oil, so it's a huge benefit for everybody, and they're offering massive protections to the country for free.
I can't find the troll comment, but it went something like, oh, the EU is a superpower and Canada will benefit from joining the EU, and that we're clowns for saying that it's a bad thing.
Oh, yeah. Alberta, get out now. Get out now. The 50% is starting to infect our chat here.
Grazium says, I read that one. Oh, no. Okay. Grazium, correct. Admin is paying attention, and it's the issue. And the issue is deeper than tariffs, and it's been said he is mad. Trump.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And there's a chance for the Canadians to actually fix this. If they just want to meddle in their own by-elections and get people's elbows up, they can go back for a trade deal before the midterms, which would actually help Trump. I don't think they're going to do that. All the indications are they're going to do the opposite, especially because they've been hiring in so many Democratic operatives from the United States and the Hillary Clinton campaign.
Option Trader, hello. From the EUS says, I come in peace. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Peacefully, nice to see you here. Todd says, what an idiot, Chow. Oh, yes. I mean, have you seen, she would do better just dancing around on pride parades than trying to do whatever she's trying to do.
Well, I was shocked they brought her on there and she agreed to do it.
Steve Zavaro says, I think that's what the Borg said in Star Trek. I don't watch it, but the guy used to.
Yeah.
Option Trader says, there's a huge missing piece about the EU.
Resistance is futile.
Sure. There's a huge piece missing about the EU. Europe is completely dependent on Russia for natural gas. They closed their coal-fired power plants and went green. New scam. The EU needs Canada for energy, but
the best option for the Europe.
But Europe and the entire world runs on light crude, and Canada has heavy crude. Brand new heavy refineries would have to be built to use Canada's oil in the EU.
Yeah, the best option for the EU is actually to make peace with Russia, but they're so ideologically set in their way, they're going to refuse to do that. They blew up their own oil pipeline. Now they can't get cheap Russian oil. They have a few other pipelines still running in there that's still getting oil, and they're buying it through third parties at an increased cost. But ultimately, there is a lot of conservative strains of thought within the European Union actually talking about, well, we need to make peace with Russia if we want to bring manufacturing and a real future back to Europe. And I happen to agree with that. Europe is in a very tight spot right now.
And Yazinski, thank you so much for the $10 super chat saying, Nan and Guy, I love this live today. They're getting better every show. Love you too. Yesterday wasn't so good. Let's just say that. I messed up. Mea culpa. I fully acknowledge that. But thank you so much for being here and for the super chat.
Yeah.
Love you as well. God. Yeah, yesterday was a hot mess.
We had to talk after the show on what we needed to improve for today.
Yes, we talked.
And it went pretty smooth today, so I'm happy.
Oh, I thought you said the talk. The talk didn't go smooth. Crazy M says, but that's what happens in marriage, and we love each other.
Yeah.
Crazy M says, John, do you know he supposedly made a plan years ago to crash our economy and our country? I'm guessing you're talking about Carney.
Yeah, absolutely. And they were talking about
and
that.
He crushed the UK as well.
Well, he was talking Europe and Canada needed to get off the US dollar. He gave that speech in front of the world, and he said the Chinese yen was the way to go.
Option Trader says, Carney can instead sell liquid natural gas to the EU. Carney was installed to facilitate this while crushing Canada. And that's why he needs to federalize everything so the federal government can have basically full control over all of Canada's resources and start exploiting the ones that they've been leaving.
But he has to crush the Canadian economy in order to get federalization, because he has to have the provinces desperate coming to him for bailouts, and he'll exchange that for federalization. That's how you get that. Then you connect to the EU, and then that's the big EU bailout strategy there, I believe.
Philip says, I just wish people out east would realize that their resources would be instantly stolen by Brussels, leaving them with nothing.
Yeah, we'll really know. It's a good indicator what's going on right now. If Carney goes back and tries to get a trade deal with the Americans before the midterms, he may not try to go super fast into federalization. He may take it slower. But if he meddles in the midterms, doesn't go for a renewal of the USMCA or try to work things out, you better believe Canada is in huge hurt. So it's nice it's kind of like a warning to Canada based upon Mark Carney's actions here.
Philip says, can you imagine the irony if Germany is the one to save Europe? They are the good guys now. Well, it would help. Maybe it would help them take away that forever guilt that they've been carrying.
Ursula von der Leyen, man, she has a villainous accent.
Scary woman. Option Trader says the EU is nothing without Germany. It was the economic engine, but the Germans are eating themselves economically. The woke mind virus is spreading. Yes, it is. What?
Let's go over to RUMBLA.
Print of Alberta, there's still a lot. Print of Alberta says, thank you for what you do. I enjoy your shows. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. We really appreciate it. We're trying to get better. So, and part of the reason we're trying so hard to get better now is we're now clipping the show. So if you do miss the show and just want to watch one segment, we try to clip all the segments. We're getting good enough where we're able to clip all the segments in the beginning. We can only clip a couple because they were turning out bad.
Option Trader says if Germany leaves and reasserts itself economically, the EU and the globalists are severely weakened. And that's why they need Canada. Rage Against Machine says, together with faith in God, courage in our hearts, and responsibility toward one another, we believe there is no challenge beyond the reach of a free people determined to build their own future.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, and great comment, Rage on, says John B. Rage Against the Machine, sorry. Option Trader says Germany has not left the EU. There's talk of leaving, but I'll believe it when I see it. Yeah.
And if they do, Canada's the big bailout here. It's obvious at this point.
Exactly. Rage Against Machine says Chow already works for China. It's in the name. Rage Against Machine says China interference has been proven and buried. CSIS, which is essentially the FBI of Canada, has said it over and over again that China has interfered with Canadian elections for during Trudeau, but also during Carney.
Yeah.
Option Trader says Nord Stream 1 is still running. Nord Stream 2 was BOMB'd before it was brought online.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see who was involved in that. There was only a couple militaries that have the capability to do that. One was the British military. The other was the American. Now they blamed it on the Ukrainians. If the Ukrainians, that's the official story, is the Ukrainians did it. I thought those were supposed to be your allies. You're talking about letting them into the EU. They're the ones that bombed your pipeline, supposedly according to the official narrative, which is absolutely ridiculous at this point. It's a money laundering machine.
Todd says, of course, Chow is cooperative, yeah. John B. asks, and I think this is a question for all times, asking, what is wrong with Eastern Canadians?
They got their elbows over their ears and eyes.
Rage Against Machine says, I wish I knew it has to change or they are effed. Yep. And John B says, right on, guy. Option Trader says, Nord Stream 2 was built because Nord Stream 1 runs through Ukraine and vulnerable to attacks. Let that sink in.
Yeah, there's a couple other pipelines up there that are smaller as well, but they've been trying to bomb those pipelines as well. But they're using those pipelines as well, and then they're buying Russian oil from third parties like India, who's buying it in mass quantities and reselling it to Europe at an increased cost. You're getting the oil from Russia any which way, yet you continue to sanction it, charging yourself more for oil.
And Holden, thank you so much again for the $5 super chat, saying love you both. Keep fighting the freedom fight. Gotta go. See you all soon. Shout out Nat in the Guy Chat. Great group. Let's make it grow. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your funny name that I always try to avoid, and for the super chat as well. William Rebel says, I've been enjoying the clips, typically between 10 to 15 minute clips. Get your fix, everyone. Thank you so much. And lastly, Todd says, fringe, and he has the unacceptable fringe at starting. But we're heading over to RUMBLE, so our show is not over yet. Still some spicy stuff happening over on RUMBLE that YouTube doesn't like us to talk about. Don't forget to subscribe before we head over there. You can find our username right there for Rumble, I'll just say it. And Option Trader quickly says, in 2018, the Department of War said Ukraine was the world's largest money laundering operation. And they were not wrong, were they? That's why Chrystia Freeland is over there. But now let's go over to RUMBLE. There's a 30-second wait screen, and then we'll pop up over there.
Let's get ready to rumble!